It is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. The name of that band is called Saints of Rebellion, and the name of that tune is called New American Dream, which is the title track off that CD. And I want to welcome to the Classic Metal Show for the first time, and probably for a lot of our fans, guitarist John Adams. Welcome to the Classic Metal Show there, John.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, good to talk to you. You come highly recommended from our good friends Red and Jerry over at the Rock and Metal Revival. So are you?
All right. Right on. Good guys.
Yeah. So anyway, they highly recommended that we get you guys on the show. So here you are.
Cool, man. Well, how you doing?
Good. Well, you know, John, I always discover, new bands and new music through either the record labels or suggestions of friends, etc. And you guys are kind of like out there making a lot of noise. You're kind of new in your own right, and you released your album last year, which I just played the title track from.
Cool.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the band and how you came together, because you guys are kind of spread out between Arkansas, Florida, and Maryland.
Well, we were kind of all handpicked by the label. The label was used to doing a certain type of band, and they wanted to get away from that, do a little something a little more modern than what they had been doing. And basically, we were all the guys who were kind of the alphas, so to speak, the movers and shakers, of all of our prospective bands from wherever we were from. And they wanted it was kind of a social experiment to begin with, to see if you could take 4 alpha males and put them all in the same room and have some kind of music come out of it. So really, there was no real preconceived notion of what the sound was going to sound like. They just took 4 players they knew were, the movers from all their prospective bands, and put us all together and, let us have at it and let's see what happens.
Sure. So you guys really didn't have any kind of friendship or kinship prior to that then, huh?
Well, our original drummer knew Jay, our bass player, from here and there, passing through town at different points. And I also knew our original drummer we live in the same area in Southwest Florida, so I'd known him. I wouldn't say, we were hangout buddies or anything like that, but, we had jammed a couple of times, and I knew who he was. I didn't know Jay, our bass player, at all, and I didn't know Kobe, the singer, at all, so that was definitely new ground for me, getting to know everybody. Sure.
Well, that's kind of an interesting experiment that you just throw, 4 guys that, for the most, for all intents and purposes, we're not, high school friends or, bandmates or something, that you guys just decided, hey, let's try to make something happen here. And obviously you did with your debut release with New American Dream. So that's kind of an interesting thing that you don't hear much about these days, because years ago, I'm sure you're familiar that like, just for example, and I'm not making any comparisons here, but for a label to take 4 guys and put them together and make a group out of them, all like the Monkees, and be successful, that's not very common.
Yeah, I don't think it was nearly as contrived as, like, say, something like the Monkees. It was, they're taking guys that they knew were the guys from their own bands who made things happen. And I think one of the reasons I, in particular, was picked is because I was pretty well known as a songwriter. I mean, yeah, obviously I'm a guitar player, but I fancy myself as a songwriter first and foremost. So they definitely want to have one of those kind of guys in the band that was going to facilitate the songwriting process. They kind of picked and chose us for different reasons. I don't know all of the reasons. I wasn't really privy to that. But, it wasn't like so contrived where they put 4 guys together that he knew were going to be a corporate force to market. It was more, it was definitely more experimental.
Right. Well, not only being, a musician, but everybody has their own personal circumstance. And I'm sure you're well aware that the style of music that you guys do, unfortunately, is not the flavor of the day. So it's very tough being a musician in this climate anymore. So how do you guys arrange your personal lives? Some of you may have day jobs, I don't know, but you got to pay the bills somehow. So how do you guys arrange your personal agendas to be able to get together and perform as a band when you're kind of like spread apart?
It's always interesting. We block off different time periods to get together, to write, to rehearse, to go on the road. I've had the same job for 22 years, so they've been really, really nice to me and letting me go off and pursue my rock and roll fantasies when the times are necessary for me to go do that. Plus, I've got a really good, solid family behind me that help me out when I'm off doing that. And then I come back home and I go back into my normal routine of going to work every day and going to the gym and doing what I do. But yeah, you're definitely right. It's not easy. One of the things that initially attracted me to heavy metal when I was back 9 years old was that, especially in 1983, 84, it was definitely more of an outsider's music. And when it became all very popular and cheesy and homogenized in the late 80s, I wasn't a big proponent of those MTV pretty bands. I more gravitated towards the bands that were at the time underground bands, say Metallica, Megadeth, Testament, Slayer. And I've always loved the outsider factor. I was never one of the cool kids in high school. I'm still not now. So I always liked the underdog status of rock and roll and heavy metal. And, it comes and goes. Everything is cyclic. Everything comes in cycles. And, heavy music or rock music, it has its moments. Every couple of years it gets popular again and goes away when the sheep all start listening to Katy Perry and things like that.
Sure.
But, but that's always been one of the major appeals to me about heavy music, is that it's not for everything and it's not always popular. And I'm against the grain kind of a person. Right.
Well, it's clear from listening to the Saints of Rebellion release that you definitely bring a hard driving influence a la Zakk Wylde to the table. And I notice on your New American Dream video you play a very similar style of guitar as Zakk Wylde. Do you ever get concerned that people might brand you as a Zakk Wylde knockoff?
You know what? If they do, there's no better person to be compared to as far as I'm concerned, so I'll take that for what it's worth.
Sure.
In the video, I am playing a Zakk signature guitar. My main guitar is my main beat-up Brown Les Paul that I've been playing for 20 years. But I figured I'd give that guitar a little bit of exposure because it looked really cool in the video.
Sure.
And it's generally my backup guitar, so it's not really the guitar that I'm immediately associated with. My main Les Paul I've had for 20 years, and it's become kind of an extension of my body and my personality, and most people will recognize me more with that guitar. However, the Zakk Wylde comparisons, I'm not even a flea on Zakk's butt, but I'll take whatever comparisons that come from Zakk. I mean, that's definitely one of my biggest influences, one of my guitar heroes. And, like I said, if you're going to be compared to anybody, you might as well shoot for the stars.
Right, absolutely. Have you had an opportunity to meet Zakk in person?
Yeah, actually, I've met him quite a few times. There's quite a few stories. I've had arm wrestling matches with Zakk. I had a wrestling match with Zakk where he broke the table once. I've been on Zakk's bus before, and I was just recently in September, I was on the Motorhead cruise, or Motorhead Motorboat cruise. I'm sorry, a little confused there. And Zakk was on board playing acoustically on that trip. So, yeah, I've had quite a few run-ins, but it's not the kind of deal where I can say, hey, I've got him on my phone, and I can call him up and say hello. It's just one of those deals we've met a few times, but every time it's like we're meeting for the first time again.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I get that. All right, cool. Well, tell us a little bit about this New American Dream release. You mentioned that you are a songwriter, so I'm assuming that probably a majority of the songs has your fingerprint on it. So tell us a little bit about the the process that you went through in writing this with three guys that, for all intents and purposes aren't like your lifelong bandmates.
Well, a lot of material that ended up on the New American Dream record, we Actually, I had kind of sitting around for a few years. I'd written some songs with some other people in one of my other bands. I've got my musical collaborator here in Florida, my best friend. We've been writing songs together for 20 years. So we were able to kind of pick and choose through some of my back catalog. And also I had quite a few songs that I hadn't really finished up yet. So I was able to kind of go through some of the songs that they liked of my back catalog, rehash them, make them Saints of Rebellion songs, because everybody has to add their own influence to make it feel like it's theirs. And then some of the stuff that, wasn't quite finished, I brought to the table, and we were able to finish pretty quickly. So it wasn't like we completely wrote an album in a month and recorded it, bada boom. Like I said, some of it was already, I'd done demos of quite a few of the songs.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you guys recorded this in Arkansas, and you worked with a classic metal show friend, Ty Sims of Bombay Black. And great guy. How did you come across Ty?
That was our original drummer. Had recorded with Ty previously, and had a what's the word I'm looking for? Do him. Sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied. It's been a long day for me. But yeah, and they had a great relationship. So when it came up to go in the studio, we decided to go with Ty and give it a shot. And it turned out great. I really enjoyed working with him. He doesn't necessarily come from the exact same background as I do, but he came from enough of a similar background and understood a lot of the concepts that I was going for with these songs, where he really helped me flesh out some of the ideas on record.
Sure. Now, I know your singer, he's down from close to the Louisiana area down there. Now, do you think that he has any influences from another Southern-based band from the 80s, Every Mother's Nightmare?
No, I wouldn't say that at all.
Not at all?
No, he more grew up, he definitely grew up singing a lot of gospel and stuff like that, but he was definitely a blues guy growing up, very much Stevie Ray Vaughan and stuff like that. And then when the 90s came around is when he was really coming into his own as a musician. So he was influenced also by, way more of the 90s bands than the 80s bands. He really didn't have a lot to do with too much of the 80s music. And sometimes when I bring up different 80s references, he kind of looks at me confused.
Sure, absolutely. Well, there's a regional band down there in the Georgia area. They carry that 80s spirit with them. Are you familiar with Mad Margaret?
No, I'm not.
No, they're from down the Georgia, Florida area. They tour down around your area, and they're original band, but they have a very 80s style about them, and they're kind of a popular band. So I was just wondering if you had heard of them, but they're just one of those fun, good time 80s style band. But what you guys do seems to be more in line with what like a Black Stone Cherry is doing these days. Kind of a rougher, gruffer vocal style, a more aggressive guitar, kind of a heavier bass, and that seems to be, I don't want to call it trendy by any chance, because you're certainly not going to hear that on any commercial radio outlet, but it seems to be a style that is becoming somewhat popular with the harder rock, heavy metal crowd.
Yeah, we get compared to them quite a bit on the reviews of the record. And like I said, if you're going to be compared to anybody, it's always great to be compared to a great band. I'd much rather be compared to that than, some other bands. I don't want to name any names. I don't want to put myself out there and look like I take my name in any of bands I really don't like.
Right.
But yeah, we get compared to that a lot. But it was not a contrived thing by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, some of these songs I've had kicking around for 13 or 14 years, way before anybody knew who Black Stone Cherry was. So it wasn't like we set out for a particular style. It just kind of came out. I mean, I'm a Florida boy, born and raised. I'm a metal guy first and foremost. But down here in Florida, they put Leonard Skinner in our baby bottles. And Kobe being an Arkansas boy, he's definitely as southern as it gets. So, you take the heavy rock that I enjoy playing and writing, and you add that southern twist to it, and, something comes out kind of similar to Black Stone Cherry. Like I said, I'll take that.
Sure. Now, you obviously been around the horn a while, so give me your impressions of a band, say, like Jackal.
I love Jackal. Jackal. I got into Jackal when they very first came out. I loved the whole was I Stand Alone Today video when they played in a Walmart parking lot on a flatbed trailer.
Sure.
I loved Jesse James Dupree. I love his rock and roll attitude. I actually opened for Jackal in probably 2003 at a point where they weren't nearly what they are, well, to begin with, or what they have re-become. You know, they were playing bars at the time, and I got to play a show with them, and they're a great band. And what's kind of cool about them is they've got a pretty classic sound that really doesn't rely on trends or radio play or, you know, what's the current flavor of the month. So I think a band like Jackal is always going to be around in some way, shape, or form. And also those guys are tour dogs. I mean, they're always out playing. And Jesse keeps finding cool ways to reinvent himself in the band, you know, especially with the new Sturgis tie-in and the Jesse James whiskey, which I just bought a bottle of the other night. And, yeah, like I said, I have nothing but good things to say about a band like Jackal. I love them.
Right, absolutely. Now, you mentioned, you know, being that you're from Florida and you know, Leonard Skinner is from Jacksonville, Florida. What's your thoughts on the Skinner lineup still touring today, even though there's only one original member?
Well, I mean, actually, you're not quite right there because Rick Medlock, who's one of the second guitar players, actually started off as Skinner's drummer in the original incarnation before they got signed and made it big. So Ricky was actually part of the band. And Gary Rossington's also one of my favorite guitar players. But to answer your question, I think if anybody is going to go out there and sing Ronnie songs, I think Johnny Van Zant is the guy to do it. I absolutely love his voice. And, I mean, he's been in the band now, 3 or 4 times longer than the original incarnation of Leonard Skinner was even together before the plane crash. I think it's great that they're still out there playing music for the people. They're playing Ronnie songs that are never going to die. And like I said, with Johnny Van Zant delivering those songs every night, I think you can't go wrong. I love Johnny Van Zant singing.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you know, there for the longest time, you know, we were very, very good friends, very close friends with Ian Evans before he passed away a few years ago from cancer, unfortunately. But, you know, I've had many opportunities to hang out and see the Skinner band lineup as it is, you know, currently, you know. But I agree with you. It's always a good show. Well,
yeah, you know, that's one of those bands that, you know, I wish I had been old enough to have witnessed the original version. But that being said, I've been watching the current versions because the current version isn't the same version it was 20 years ago. But I've been watching the current versions for, you know, 20-plus years now since they got, probably around since 1991 or 92 when they put out the last Rebel record, I think was the first time I went and got to see Skinner. And for me, it was awesome. You know, I mean, little Skinner story for me. Like I said, I grew up a Florida boy, so Skinner was always around, and I always heard it, but I was always more of a metal guy. When I was 18, I went to go live on a ranch in Colorado for a year, and I got into my uncle's CD collection at the time, and I was missing home, and I was missing Florida, and I was a bit homesick, and I found the Skinner CDs, and I started listening to Skinner CDs with a whole new set of ears, and it reminded me of home, it reminded me of Florida, and I went through a Skinner phase that lasted, about 2 years worth. I drove everybody I knew crazy with playing nothing but Skinner, and I wanted to be a Skinner tribute band.
Nice.
And yeah, so I mean, Skinner to me is, you know, there's a few bands in my top tier of bands that I will love and have love forever and will always love, and Skinner is definitely one of those bands.
Sure, absolutely. Well, John, Saints of Rebellion has had, you know, pretty good success being a part of various for lack of a better term, festivals or events. I mean, I see that you got a whole list of things that you guys have had an opportunity to be a part of, be it the Skull Fest or, you know, some of these rock M3 fests and things like that. What do you attribute to your ability to get, you know, involved with some of these big lineups? Because, you know, so many other bands are vying for an opportunity to play at, you know, these things, and everybody's looking for some kind of exposure. So what do you attribute to your success getting involved with some of these bigger events?
Well, you know, I would say initially we got on some of those lineups due to our label's past experiences and connections. At first I was a little concerned when we started playing some of these festivals because I've never been in what I would call a throwback band. I'm not a huge fan of the 80s hair metal scene per se. I mean, there's some bands that I liked, but to me, by 1987 and on, the third and fourth rate versions of some of those bands that were coming out really destroyed metal. It became so commercialized and so homogenized that you could pretty much pick and choose. Well, this will be their first release, the Power Ballad will be its second release. So the hairspray and lipstick bands really didn't do a whole lot for me at that time period. And we've been playing with a few of those bands, and honestly, they've all been really, really cool. And most of them still bring it live. So I'm proven wrong.
Right.
But and like I said, I don't want to say anything bad about them. It just wasn't my cup of tea. By the late 80s, I was firmly into Metallica land, and bands like, just say, Britney Fox, for example, just weren't doing it for me at that point.
Right.
And now, we're still getting a lot of those shows and a lot of festivals, and I don't mind it, even though initially I was concerned, because it really doesn't matter what kind of crowd you put us in front of, if it's a cock rock crowd or a metal crowd. We will convert 75 to 95% of those people who may not have heard us, as long as they're open to hard rock and metal music. 9 times out of 10, we'll convert those people. So if you stick me in front of an LA Guns crowd, for example, like I said, I guarantee we'll convert a few of them.
Sure, absolutely. Well, when with Saints of Rebellion and recording a CD and getting music out there and whatnot, what is your biggest hope where this music will be heard or be exposed? Because I'm sure you're well aware that, commercial FM radio certainly is not going to play that, and that's not a slight against you. It's just, that's just the environment today. So what is the marketing strategy for a Saints of Rebellion, and, where do you hope to be heard aside from, a live festival or an opportunity to play in front of a crowd?
I have a hard time really answering that. I'm not entirely sure. These days things are changing, and they continue to change, and every year it seems like the game changes a bit. Right here in my own town where I've been playing for 20 years, I've been part of a lot of pretty decent bands in this town. We've got our major rock radio station, but they're controlled by a corporate entity who I'm not going to name on the air. And said corporate entity controls the majority of the rock radio stations in this country. And unless you've got $100,000 to push behind the band to get played on said corporate radio, you're just not going to get your songs played. And unfortunately, if you listen to most corporate new rock radio stations, you're only going to hear 2, 3, maybe 4 new bands every year, because those are the bands that are getting the financial push to actually get played on those channels. And it really kind of sucks for everybody, fans included, because there's so many great bands out there that don't have that kind of backing behind them, that are never going to get played on the radio. Instead, you're going to hear the same Pearl Jam song once an hour. You're going to hear the same rotation. They don't take very many chances with new rock on these radio stations, unless, like I said, you've got the money to push it. But, to answer your question, I don't know. We are flexing and evolving and changing along with the times in the marketplace, and we just have to continue to find new ways to market ourselves. We're going to South America at the end of March, playing a festival there, and there's supposed to be a lot of people from the European festival circuit in attendance. So, we'll see how that goes. And, these days, I don't think that radio play is nearly as critical as it once was, because I think a lot of the real rock fans have kind of shied away from corporate radio because they know they're going to hear the same songs every hour.
Right. Might hear Sweet Home Alabama every other hour or so.
Yeah, I mean, not that that's a bad thing, but I don't know how many thousands of times I want to hear that.
Sure, absolutely.
I'd much rather hear, and also satellite radio is doing pretty well, but there again, satellite radio isn't quite as corporified as, I guess that's one of my Don King words right there. I just made that up. It's not quite as bad as some of the corporate controlled FM stations, but it's still a pay-to-play kind of deal. You're not really going to get played too much on satellite radio unless you've got money behind that. although the money's not nearly as much as it is to get paid on one of the terrestrial FM stations.
Sure, absolutely. Well, John, tell us what's the future hold for Saints of Rebellion? I know you mentioned in March you're going to South America, so what's the long-term game plan for 2015?
You know, right now it's in a state of flux. I don't do a lot of the business and booking end of it. Fortunately, Jay and his wife Taylor, they handle a lot of that end of stuff because I'm just not. I'm not the PR guy for the most part. I fancy myself as a songwriter, and they kind of leave me alone to write songs. I like that aspect of it. But I can tell you we've got the festival in South America, and we're looking to book out probably spring and June and July. And from there, I don't know too much. I'm a Florida boy, so I tend to have an aversion to touring in the Midwest or the Northeast during wintertime. I don't like cold at all.
Sure.
So we've been kind of laying low. We kind of needed a break. I've been home writing songs and back working and trying to make some money and all that while I'm home. But let's see with the holidays, you know, I've got an almost 18-year-old daughter and a family, so I really don't want to be on the road in the holidays, you know, unless there's some windfall and they're offering me a lot of money to do it, which these days just doesn't happen, you know.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, John, well, is there anything else you want to tell the fans about yourself or Saints of Rebellion or this release? Anything you could tell us that maybe the fans don't know or you want them to know?
Oh, you're putting me on a spot there. I'm really not sure. I hadn't really thought about the answer to that question. Some of the questions I kind of thought would come up, I actually thought for a second about before you called. But, you know, just be on the lookout for us. I think we're going to be putting some new music out possibly by the end of summer. And, you know, we'll be on the road, and hopefully we'll see you on the road because that's where all hard rock bands are making their living these days, is going out there and touring city to city.
Sure. Well, what's the significance of the CD cover with the black eye on Ben Franklin? And, you know, I don't know, is that blood? Is that blood on the bill?
Yeah. Well, you know, the whole concept of New American Dream, you know, it's the only song on the record like that. You know, they all fall under the same umbrella. They all sound like Saints of Rebellion. It's not like 10 songs. They all sound like different bands. But New American Dream, I wrote a couple of years ago, and it was really my reflection on society today as far as American society goes. Corporate control, bankers, the corporations, the government, just really, you know, I'm a direct descendant of John Adams and John Quincy Adams, and what our government today has become is a far, far cry from what my forefathers fought for. And having been through a lot of the economic troubles, I lost a house in 2008 due to unfair banking practices, among other things. And I'm not a huge fan of corporate America. So really, my take on New American Dream was just kind of looking around and thinking, you know what, how is the common man feeling today? How am I feeling today? How am I feeling about where my country is right at the moment and where it's going? And, you know, I've had every once in a while somebody ask me, well, you know, are you being unpatriotic with that? And my answer to that is no, quite the contrary. I'm as patriot as it gets, but I'm a patriot for the right reasons.
Well, I can tell you probably voted for Obama then.
Yeah, you know, I don't like to get too political. I'm not a big fan of the last guy, by any stretch of the imagination, the great linguist of our time. And I'm not a huge fan of Obama. I'm really not a fan of any of them because as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. They're both ruled by separate special interest groups, and they're both funded by different corporations for different reasons. So it really doesn't matter. And you know, the Republicans get in power. They take my money to go off to war and feed the big businesses. And the Democrats get in power, and they take my money and they give it to people that don't want to work.
Right.
So really neither one of them represent me. You know, I'm pretty much a proponent of gay people being able to have abortions, being able to adopt people, and protect their pot plants with assault rifles. You know, so I mean, I'm pretty much, I would say, a libertarian, I guess, if you will. I'm pretty much do what you want to do if it doesn't hurt anyone else and it makes you happy. And I don't like the government religion or anyone else coming in and telling me how I should or how I could or how I cannot live. So, I mean, really, I as far as Obama, Bush, whoever, they're all kind of the same thing to me. I mean, there was a picture I once saw on the internet. It showed this kind of conglomeration of Bush's face mixed with Obama's face, because as far as I'm concerned, they're really not that different.
Sure, absolutely. All right, well, the name of the band, of course, is Saints of Rebellion. Their current release is New American Dream. You can go pick that thing up all over the place, I would imagine. I'm sure that you got downloads via the iTunes and Amazon and, you know, all the typical outlets.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely, you can find it on iTunes. You can go to our website, www.saintsrebellion.com, and you can order the physical copy. If you're a big fan, you can order an autographed copy. I believe it's on Amazon, and I think a few other outlets. It's hard to find in stores.
Stores?
Really
What's
days,
that?
Yeah, who buys physical CDs in stores anymore? Well, I do, but I think I'm one of the minorities out there. I still like having an actual physical copy to go with my download, so I spend a lot of time at FYE, either buying new or used CDs.
Sure, absolutely. All right, John, it's been a pleasure speaking with you here on the Classic Metal Show. Go over there to saintsofrebellion.com. Go visit those guys, find out where they're going to be. Go see them if they're playing live in a town near you, and pick up the CD, New American Dream. So,
yeah, and beyond that, if you're looking for the most recent updates, we tend to update the Facebook page actually with pretty good regularity. We do the website fairly often, but the Facebook page, there's always somebody saying something on the Facebook page. So if you want to find out what we're up to or what's on our minds any particular day, that's probably the best outlet to find us.
Absolutely. All right, John. Well, before we let you go, I'm going to ask you the traditional Classic Metal Show question. We've got over 300 answers to this over the years, so we're gonna add yours to the bunch. How has Lemmy from Motorhead influenced your career?
How has Lemmy from Motorhead influenced my career? I love Lemmy from Motorhead. I think Lemmy is, well, you know, I mean, it's very typical to say Lemmy is God. Like I said, I was just on the Motorhead motorboat cruise a couple of months ago, so I got to witness Lemmy once again in all his glory. And I love Motorhead. I love the raw power of it. And like I said, I've always been a big Metallica fan. And as far as I'm concerned, with no Motorhead, there would have never been Metallica. So really, it's almost as important to me as Black Sabbath as far as like the roots of metal, hard rock, and where it is now. And I love that they're still out there doing what they're doing. And it seems right now that Motorhead's actually got a new level of popularity going on right now. I think is absolutely amazing. So I guess long answer to a short question.
Sure, absolutely. All right, John. Well, again, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here on the Classic Metal Show. And
thank you for having me.
As a tradition here, we always let the artist pick a song from the CD and maybe tell us a quick story about it.
Oh, okay. Well, didn't think about that either. I guess let's go with Wine, Women, and Song. I wrote that one, God, about 5 or 6 years ago, and it really didn't come to fruition until Kobe came into the band, because Kobe had the perfect voice for it. It was kind of my reaction. I'm a big Sons of Anarchy fan, and I was watching Sons of Anarchy one night, and I thought, you know what? What would happen if I wrote my own version of their theme song? And Wine, Women, and Song is what came out. And it's one of those songs that it can be either applicable to a rock band on the road, a biker gang, or any group of guys who just want to live free.
Absolutely. All right, well, here it is. This is the Saints of Rebellion, and this is what we love on the Classic Metal Show, Wine, Women, and Song.